Hi, Carrie. How are you? Hi,
Great.
everybody. I am loving the celebration of how we're moving to middle age. Someone said moving towards the things I love, transitioning from one career to another, nature walking, coaching. You guys are good at this. I feel like this is a group that is good at middle age. Honoring my mom by being active and eating healthy. Um, Carrie, how about you? Let's hear yours.
How am I honoring middle age?
Yeah.
I have learned that if I don't know if I want to do something or not, I tell people I have to wait 24 hours. And
Oh,
that's been like the best thing. So I don't like get myself into something I don't actually want to do. And then I'm better at saying no if I wait 24 hours. That's and not a fun, but honestly, I'm celebrating that. Like that's a big win for me.
is there anybody else in here? And you can just give me like a yes in the chat. Is there anybody else who's getting super, not super good, but maybe like better with boundaries? It feels like a real middle-aged thing, right? I see a hand go up from my conspirator over there, Dr. Suzanne, trying. Yes. Only do I need to do. Yes. I was right. You guys are good at this. Um,
Hmm.
easy. Not that it's easy, right? But it does get easier. It's like that first no is a little tentative, and then it becomes like the roaring no of like, no, I don't think so. Someone
I
asked
learned a
me,
really good trip, a very good modern elder trick today before we bring
what?
everybody up. Is if you have a big decision to make and you're not really sure, right? If it's yes or no, you flip
Yeah,
a coin and then heads is yes and tails is no. And then you react to how you feel about the answer, right? And then
yeah,
you have a better idea about making that decision. Isn't that a modern elder move right there? I love that.
absolutely. Let's talk about Yael here saying that she doesn't consider herself to be middle aged. She's 68 years old and proud of it and identifies as an honored elder. I would love to honor you as an honored elder. Thank you for letting us know that, Yael. That is beautiful. Um, we've got riding emotional waves. Who is the one? I know somebody, one of our thought leaders in this space was talking about the full body yes. Who
Ooh,
is that?
Scott Shute.
Is that Scott? Well, I think,
Scott Shute from LinkedIn wrote a book called Full Body Yes. How great
okay,
is that?
full body yes. All right, so we've got some other people on this call with us today. Carrie,
And
should we?
this was your idea. So I feel like you've got to own the fact that you have stood up for this topic of not only celebrating middle age, but looking at the health changes that happen in middle age. And we're going to spend a lot of time talking about the girls in the room. And guys, thank you for showing up to better understand all the different changes that are happening around women's health. So we're going to focus on that today, as well as general health. But I just want to give you a moment to just reflect on why you think this is such an important issue and look at how many people registered today. So clearly it's important for a lot of us.
I mean, what let's even backtrack. So we opened the academy 6 years ago. I'm 54 right now. I was most likely at that point 6 years ago in perimenopause. I am now menopausal. I'm postmenopausal. I had no idea. I was going to my doctor, I was having migraines, all the symptoms that now in retrospect were clearly perimenopausal, but I didn't have that information. And it wasn't something that we were talking about as an organization. We absolutely cannot be a midlife wisdom school without addressing the fact that this massive suite of changes is happening. I've heard, someone said that menopause, and Dr. Suzanne, feel free to jump in on this, but we're basically it's like a complete chemical recreation of who we are in this time. So I don't know how we have this conversation in the early days, or how we have this midlife conversation without acknowledging that this is happening to half of our population, half of our audience, and nobody's getting out clean, right? If you know a woman or love a woman, if you are not physically going through the changes, you still will be impacted by these
As
changes.
Chip has discovered, if you work with one or you have hormone suppression therapy as a man, you get to go
Absolutely.
there too. So let's
Absolutely.
bring up some of our guests. What do you think?
I would love to. The fact that we've been able to tap into thought leaders in this area, and Dr. Suzanne, you've heard me say this before. When I first started looking, like, who are our thought partners through this? Because we are pro aging as an organization. We are, I'm not interested in the shame spiral. I'm not interested in telling people that the best thing that you can do for yourself in menopause is stay thin. And so many of the thought leaders, when I first started trying to dig in around this, was like, we can, there's ways that you can stay slender. Like, great, being slender and being strong are wonderful, but there's so much more happening. And when we found you with this holistic approach to health and thriving, I was like, I've found my friend and my partner. So this is Dr.
Yes.
Suzanne.
Oh, well, yes. The first time we met, we definitely were like, it was a big simpatico moment for both of us. So thanks for having me here.
And let me just quickly tell everybody who you are, because you
Yes.
are amazing. Dr. Suzanne Gilberg-Lenz. She is a practicing physician at Women's Care Beverly Hills in obstetrics and gynecology. She's a specialist in women's health, but she also completed her clinical Ayurvedic specialist degree and board certified in integrative and holistic medicine. So she has been a real thought leader in this space. She's been on Dr. Drew's Life Changers, the Tara Banks Show, Today Show, Headline News, No Spin Zone. She has a popular menopause boot camp event to help guide people through the transitions of menopause, and her book was published of the same name. So I love that we can start with you, and you and Christine are going to be teaching together, and you can just help us start with what are we getting wrong about midlife health and how does it affect everybody, men, women, coworkers, children, and the like.
Yeah, well, thanks for teeing that up. First of all, and I really love that you started by contextualizing this. That it's funny. A lot of times when I'm in a lot of spaces that what we call the menoverse, for those of you know, we have a name for ourselves. We talk about we're 51% of the population, and we're spending a third to a half of our lives in menopause. But the reality is that this does affect everybody. I mean, there are not a lot of people who do not identify as women who don't interact with women in some way. So the reality is that segregating this portion of the population just doesn't really make sense for a million different reasons. I think the headline here for what we're getting wrong is that we're looking at this specifically as an ending instead of the beginning that it is. I think that's the biggest issue. And then it leads to a lot of downstream consequences that are negative to our health. Okay. And I'm not going to suck the life out of the room because other people need to talk too. But I will say that when we discard an entire part of our lives, or we try to hide it because it's been stigmatized, we are ashamed, we don't feel like we have resources, we don't know where to get the resources, or the resources we're getting are kind of sketchy, we are not going to be able to understand what are the things that we can do to get through a challenging period, because this is just yet another transition in our health and our lives. And then we're going to miss opportunities to increase our health span, not just our lifespan. So I think shifting the focus, like Christine was very frustrated. And I think one of the reasons that I started doing the work that I do was because I too was frustrated that the information wasn't out there. My patients, the people that I educate, didn't understand basic terminology even. And I think that's still a big problem. But they were missing a big opportunity. And I started seeing this as kind of, it's funny because Chip uses the same analogy in his book that I use in my book, which is sort of this chrysalis. It's a developmental phase. It's just akin to puberty, honestly. So I think when we can view this differently and see it as a new beginning, we can dig in, we can understand this as a transition. Transitions can be difficult, they can be challenging, but when we're resourced and we're not alone, we're going to have a better opportunity. So just to throw out a couple little factoids. I mean, I think without getting, look, there's the obvious stuff, as specifically for women, as we go through the transition of the menopause change, we start to lose estrogen and testosterone and progesterone, and we start to have similar health problems to men. This is where we start getting a lot of the inflammatory metabolic conditions. We have the same rates, if not higher, of heart disease. Okay, the number one killer of women is not breast cancer, it's heart disease. We have much higher rates of dementia, 2 to 3 times the rates of dementia in this part of the world as our male cohorts. And then of course we have big problems with osteoporosis. Men do also, actually. So if we understand those things, yes, that's important to unpack. But here's the other thing, and I think we talk about this a lot when we talk about community building and MEA and why it's so important. Loneliness is more dangerous to your health than smoking cigarettes. So that's another big missed opportunity or mistake that we're making about extending health span. When we start to isolate, when we maybe leave work and we don't continue to create community or join communities, we face isolation, which is very dangerous to our health. The last thing I want to say is so interesting. I just had an opportunity to participate in a book event for my dear friend, Dr. Lisa Mosconi, who's a very important neuroscientist, and she's published her second book this week called The Menopause Brain. And it was a really interesting reframing for me yet again around brain health and aging women. And the idea that our brains, something you said, Carrie, really resonated around this, not discontinuing this narrative of loss around aging. When our brains actually go through developmental phases as women. Okay, so puberty is one. If you experience pregnancy, that's another, and menopause is another. And your brain actually takes the opportunity with the chemical changes that Christine mentioned, with the hormonal shifts and changes, and it remodels and helps to develop new connections that are going to be able to help us face the tasks that we are going to be looking at now as we age. And it's so wonderful that one of you read the comment about somebody talking about feeling like they're in their wisdom elder years. That's exactly what our brain is supposed to do at this point in life. And evolutionary and developmental biology shows us, whether or not you believe in this stuff, that the task of the menopausal woman is to help to lead the tribe and keep the tribe safe, healthy, keep wisdom alive, to help generations. We're one of only 4 or 5 species on the planet that go through menopause. We are supposed to live into menopause because we have something to offer. So I will leave it at that.
This is so good. I just had to bring in now Michelle and Céline to join this conversation, particularly as you were speaking about the impact of loneliness. Social wellness has become a term that we are using all the time at MEA. So I wanted to kind of represent, not only are Christine and Suzanne going to be doing this week together and really diving into women's health and menopause, but we have a partnership with the Blue Zones. Most of us have heard of the Blue Zones with Dan Buettner, Netflix special, all the things. And so we have Céline here with us, who is training our faculty to be leading Blue Zone themed weeks. And Céline invited Dr. Michelle to join us here today as well. So let me just do a quick intros for the two of them, because you're going to want to hear what they have to say too. Dr. Michelle Tollefson, she's a leader in the field of lifestyle medicine for women. She's board certified in lifestyle medicine and OBGYN. She lives in Colorado, and she created and oversees a lifestyle medicine program. And she's one of the first physicians ever trained as a wellness coach. So I'm excited to hear some of your thoughts. And Céline is here as our hospitality expert at Blue Zones, along with her involvement of studying the locations of the Blue Zones. She creates inspiring wellness concepts and experiences with her holistic health and lifestyle experience, as well as a hospitality background. She's a certified health and lifestyle coach, and many, many things. So I'd love to have the two of you jump in to kind of pull from what you heard from Suzanne. Is a little bit, maybe, Michelle, you wrote a textbook on improving women's health across the lifespan. So what have you learned, and how does the Blue Zone support both women's health, all of our health, and these midlife transitions?
So thank you so much for the opportunity to be here with you today. So before I share some information about the Blue Zone, I just want to share some information about my story. So 5 years ago, menopause wasn't really on my radar. I was treating patients for it with conventional medicine and then lifestyle behavior changes too. And then I was diagnosed with breast cancer. And so I went through a menopause crash. I went through immediate menopause with having with 16 rounds of chemotherapy. Then I had my ovaries out and forever entered the menopause club. So that's when I realized how little evidence-based practical information was available for women who want to thrive through the transition and for decades to come, So what I've learned after going through that experience and from my background is that most women in the United States go through the menopause transition and postmenopause with more negative physical and emotional symptoms than in the blue zones. And so if you're asking what the blue zones are, they're the 5 places in the world with the healthiest, longest living populations. And what's sad is that a significant part of the suffering that we go through in the United States, both physical and emotional, it's avoided and it can be ameliorated, at least in part, with healthy lifestyle behaviors. But in the United States, as we know, it's really hard to live a healthy lifestyle because our environment so often set us up to fail. What the blue zones teach us is that there's a different way to go through the menopause transition where as the blue zone says, where the healthier choices are the easier choices. The blue zones also has their power 9. And most of these power 9 principles can positively impact the physical and the emotional symptoms the women experience during the transition and beyond. So one of the power 9 is to eat with they call it a plant slant. So that's just like nourishing foods like vegetables and fruits and whole grains and nuts and beans and seeds, eating foods that look more similar to how they did when they came from the ground and avoiding that really ultra processed food. And research shows that women who adhere to more of that plant slant way of eating, they typically have fewer hot flashes and night sweats and fewer menopausal symptoms overall. Now, some of the blue zones like Okinawa, Japan, and Loma Linda, California, that emphasize whole or minimally processed soy foods have been found that may even lead to a greater reduction in hot flashes and night sweats for some women. Also, it's rough to go through menopause in the United States where we have an epidemic of loneliness, like you were just talking about. And we know that in the blue zones, loneliness is much more rare. In fact, 3 of the power 9 have to deal with social connections. And so those 3 are belong. So most everybody in the blue zones belongs to some type of faith-based community. The other one is loved ones first. So they are known for putting family first, with aging parents and grandparents often living nearby, honoring and learning from the wisdom of the older generation. So very in line with modern elder academy. And then right tribe, which involves social circles that support healthy behaviors, which I've seen a lot of in your modern elder academy as well. And so when women are in community, in a supportive environment, it helps obviously with the physical symptoms of menopause and the emotional symptoms. Also, the power 9 includes physical activity, like moving naturally, regular physical activity, not needing to go to a gym and do like hardcore workouts, but just moving throughout our day. They have environments that encourage that regular moderate physical activity, like walking and gardening. And research also shows that women who are regularly physically active typically have fewer menopausal symptoms. So after kind of just a few of those power 9, you can see where a woman who's in the blue zones going through the menopause transition, who's supported by those empowering people in her social circle, and who's in a healthy behavior promoting environment that we see in the blue zones, that it's typically easier for them to thrive. However, do not fear if you don't live in a blue zone. I don't live in a blue zone. I live in Colorado. If you don't live in a blue zone, I really believe that knowledge is power. And so we can take what we learn from the field of lifestyle medicine. We can take what we learn from the blue zones and how those healthy, long populations have lived, and then incorporate some of those principles and make it easier to thrive through the menopause transition. And now being postmenopausal for 4.5 years too, thrive through the menopause transition and for decades to come. So thank you for letting me be here and share some of what I'm passionate about with you.
So good. Take it away, Céline. Everybody wants to know the rest of the Power 9. Tell us a little bit about how you came to help represent the Blue Zone training, which I love that, and some of your insights based on what you've been hearing so far.
Sure. So, well, before, I just want to add something to Michelle's point. So, I was reading actually today the book How Not to Age from Dr. Michael Greger, and there's a chapter on that on menopause. And actually, it's saying that in Japanese language, there's no term for hot flash. They don't have that term because the hot flash in for menopause for women in Japan is so mild that they didn't have the need to invent a term to describe it. So that goes with what you were saying with women in Okinawa, which is one of the 5 original blue zones, having less and milder menopause symptoms than in other parts of the world. And to go back to the blue zone, so the 5 original blue zones are located in various parts of the world. So we have Okinawa in Japan, we have Ikaria in Greece, We have Sardinia, like a mountainous part of Sardinia in Italy. We have the Nicoya Peninsula in Costa Rica, and we have Loma Linda in California. So very spread out around the world. And so Dan Buettner is the founder of Blue Zones, and he is a researcher, journalist from National Geographic, and he started traveling to these areas to get to know, like they found that people were living longer there, and he got interested and started to research why. And what they found, and that's the power of 9 that Michelle was talking about, they found that despite this location being spread out across the world with different cultures, different environments, they both shared similar pillars. And these pillars are the power of 9. And they go around movement, so moving naturally. So people in the blue zones don't go to the gym every day, but they hike. They don't have Uber to take them to point A to point B, so they walk or they cycle. Or if you've seen the Netflix documentary in Costa Rica, there's one of the elders who just horseback ride everywhere. They garden. In terms of connection, so what Michelle was saying, like belonging is an important part. Putting loved one first and having the right tribe, which shows, and yeah, like Dr. Susan was also talking about that, the importance of relationship and all types of relationship. And that's actually something that we're gonna go through during the retreats that we're gonna do at Modern Elder Academy. Like, what is the importance of relationship, how to make friends as older people, like as we age, because it's super easy to make, well, super easy depends. It's easier to make friends as kids than when growing up. So we're gonna look into relationship. One of a important pillar is around nutrition. And yes, in Blue Zones area, people tend to eat more plant-based or like plant-rich diets. Some Blue Zones area eat meat, but the proportion of meat eating that they do is much less than what we would consume in the Western world, where some people eat meat nearly like at every meal. There, it's more like something for celebration or something more, yeah, like once a week or a few times a month. So it's much less heavy consumption of meat. And something that's surprising, it's the wine at 5. And the wine at 5 is not only, so it's for the wine and the antioxidant effects of wine. And it's a specific wine, especially in Sardinia. So it's a red wine, but it's also for the social aspect to it. And the wine at 5 is also the idea of after a day of work or at the end of the day, regrouping with your family, with your friends, with your loved one, and sharing a glass of wine and sharing about your day, about what you've done. So it's really also the social aspect, and it's not only about the quality of the wine that you're drinking, but it's also how you're drinking it. And actually in all the Blue Zones principles, you can feel this intentionality in everything that people do, like, and how they go throughout their day. And then like the remaining core 9 principles are around your mindset, having the right outlook, having a purpose, so having a reason to wake up in the morning. Plan de vida, as we call it in Costa Rica, or like the ikigai in Japan, Okinawa. And yeah, like, did I forget? I'm trying to see if I forgot one of them.
No, that's so good, Céline. Thank you for covering all those. So Christine, how do we tie all of these things together? I think that's one of the things you do better than anybody.
Oh, thank you. I actually want to come back to a few things that were said. Number one, I love some of the simplicity of the thinking or the findings of the Blue Zones, right? Like, I just went to a presentation because New Mexico is partnering with the Blue Zones to become a Blue Zone, which is such a great and lofty goal. And the idea that I think it was in is it in Greece, that there's a correlation between longevity and the steepness of one's village,
In
right?
Sardinia. It's
Is
in
it Sardinia?
Sardinia.
So
Yeah,
the steeper the
Sardinia.
village, the longer you live. Like, just get out
Yeah.
and walk uphill, right? This is, it's such a contrast to, biohacking that's happening right now. And I'm all for all different kinds of progress, but the idea that there's like on the spectrum of biohacking to like living in a steep village and eating beans, where we've got all kinds of resource available to us. What I love and what I think that's so important about what MEA is doing in the world, and what I love about the fact that Dr. Suzanne taps back into as well, is the socio-emotional science of all of this, the importance of investing in your friendships, that the strength, social science tells us that the strength of our friendships in our 50s has impact onto our longevity and health span into our 80s, right? And I feel like, coming up through like a serious adult life and investing in your career or taking care of your family, like being a good, serious, doing adult things, it's so easy to put that in a packet of like, oh, that's social, that's not as important. But now that we know, social science tells us that is important for our health, like move that back into the priority zone, right? It is not the light stuff. It is deadly serious to invest in your social connections. And Carrie, I know that you have seen this, I'm sure, in the 6 years that we've been doing this, as people come through and they're entering, I love this in Spanish too, the tercera edad, that third age, right? Where Jeff calls it the second adulthood, where we have these choices about what we want to do with the rest of our lives. When people have this transition from being thing A into being thing B, whether it's being retired or being empty nester, or all the different changes that we see, those social connections make such a huge difference in the smoothness of the transition. What do you have to say about that, Carrie? As someone who's taken more people through our online program, you have probably touched more lives than anybody at MEA. Share with us some of your observations around that.
I think it's so true. And I'm seeing the three of you nodding your heads that, so many people arrive on our doors and they're either feeling kind of stuck for a variety of reasons. Maybe they're stuck in their health, stuck in their job, stuck in a relationship, stuck where they're trying to move, not sure how to get from one thing to the next, or trying to decide, what brings meaning anymore, and thinking they're the only ones who are feeling that way. And I know that also translates into health, maybe having symptomatology of brain fog. Christine and I talked about this for years. Like, the boys are going in a meeting and we're both like, what did they say? Those kinds of things that make you think there's something wrong with you, until you spend more time with other people and people like our guest, like Suzanne and Michelle, and so you say, no, this is part of what happens as we get older. We have these transitions, these things shift in our lives, and we are not alone. And I've certainly learned that when we talk out loud, we actually understand ourselves better. So being able to have these conversations with each other is really helpful. And we're going to give all of you a chance to talk and ask questions in a little bit. But I'd love to bring this back to you, Suzanne. How does that translate to you and experiencing different symptomatology in midlife and menopause in particular? How to raise the awareness about it, and how does that in and of itself make it easier for us to go through the journey?
That is such a great question. And one of the things that I have discovered, this is just anecdotal, right? So we have another physician on this call. I mean, there's anecdotal evidence in our personal experience in our professional setting, and then there's like the data. But I can tell you that I have this conversation all the time. And what I'll tell you what I've noticed. So I'm going to give you anecdotal evidence now, but I've been in practice for 22 years and I do this all the time, right? So what I've noticed is that in the last 3 years, when everybody started talking about menopause, because I'm not surprised that Michelle didn't feel, confident, or feel like, even as an OBGYN, she didn't really get training this. That's another Zoom call for another day. when I was playing a lot of catch up, and that's where menopause boot camp came from, by the way, because I myself was committed and had studied and was very knowledgeable in this area. My patients and my colleagues really were not. So I was getting known for that. Patients would come in, and then I'm trying to squeeze in all the education in a very short visit and help them get their PAP and do all these other things. Not possible. That's why I started doing boot camps, and then that turned into the book. Okay, just to give you some context. The conversation, the difference in the conversations that I have now, and the person who's coming in to ask for those important conversations, it's very interesting. Much younger people are coming in. What is the difference? Now I'm going to get to the answer to your question. I'd say half the time, all it needs is some breathing room. Somebody comes in and they tell me what their lived experience is, and I actually listen to it. I validate it. Maybe I'm giving them some tools from the toolkit. And because I have a wider and a deeper toolkit, because I come from conventional medicine and integrative and holistic medicine, maybe I'm pulling from the toolkit. Maybe I'm not. Maybe they're just like, oh, I'm not crazy. Oh, it's this. There's actually, and I am a person who likes to have the science and the evidence, and I like the science of social connection, by the way, but I think common sense is also going to need to prevail. So sometimes that person is leaving with a prescription. Sometimes that person is leaving with more lifestyle options. Sometimes they're looking at herbals and supplements and things like that. Sometimes they're retooling their mindset. But often it is just the recognition that they're not the only one going through this. That's changed a lot because, as I mentioned earlier, there is something that I like to call the menoverse. I'm not the only person who calls it that. I think what happened when everybody was forced online en masse during the lockdown, that's when the menopause stuff really exploded because people were both isolated and engaging in a way that they never had before, especially in this age group. And they started to not feel so alone about these experiences that nobody was talking about, that they were getting dismissed for when they went into the doctor's office, or that they didn't have time, or that they were ashamed, they didn't bring up. Groups of girlfriends weren't all talking about this all the time. So you cannot overstate how important just saying the words are. Very powerful. Words are medicine. I talk about this all the time. Our words are medicine. I understand that my journey as a healer, and I do experience my journey is not just as a doctor, but as a healer. A lot of why I speak and I write is because I know that the medicine is in those words and in the community that I help to be a part of and create.
Love it. There's a lot of questions that are starting to pile up here. But before we do that, Céline, Michelle, do you want to tag in Christine? Yeah, let's tie some of these ideas together. Go, Christine.
Just coming back to all of this. So when I first started to realize that what I was experiencing was perimenopause, I said to, I love my business partners. They are amazing. And I said, we need to have menopause-friendly hospitality here. And at that point, it was like, what the F are you talking about? I was like, I don't want to go anyplace where I can't open a window. I need a cool pillow. I need cold water. Like, I need to know that I'm not going to be trapped in a warm space. Although I will say, Céline, you make it sound so much better to have an hot flash than a hot flash. Next time I have one, I'm going to hear your voice and repurpose that as a much sexier hot flash. And I think I'll feel better about it. But again, I just want to say, I feel like we have come so far just from connection, just from raising awareness. And I'm so grateful to everyone who's doing this work. So who says other side? I'm just looking over. I call it my own personal summer. I'm enjoying the comments. So,
and I'm just going to throw in, maybe you can add something to this, Michelle and Céline, that Chip has been talking about. There's this kind of new awareness about health. We have ways to track our health now. We have apps to track our health. We have glucose monitors. We have the Ring. We have this idea of personalizing our own health for men and for women. And, Chip likes to joke that the tech bros are out there who want to live forever, and women are subjected to anti-aging advertising. But it all comes down to this desire to really make the most of the next decades of our life and to be as healthy as possible. And so I think it's really exciting to kind of get into this new dimension of personalized medicine, and that it's not just about symptoms for women, symptoms for men, but it's symptoms of our changing body, right? It's symptoms of our changing state as we move into this next chapter of our life, and addressing the ageism that needs to be addressed. That just because we're getting older and we may have some health changes, it doesn't mean we're over. It doesn't mean our opportunities to fill our bucket list is over. It doesn't mean our dreams and desires have to be put on hold in any way. It just means we may need to attend to them. So maybe you could share a little bit about that, Céline and Michelle. And then meanwhile, as they're chatting, we love to have you guys come on stage. It's hard for us to always answer the chat, and we'd love to hear it from you anyway. So down at the bottom, there's a reactions button where you could raise your hand. I'm sure there's going to be a ton of you. Don't worry, we'll get to as many as we can. But meanwhile, I'd love to hear, Céline, Michelle, your reflections on that.
I think that one thing that you mentioned is I like that word, like bio-individuality. Like today I feel like we try to fit everybody in a box and have like a one pill for, like a magic pill for everything, or like a one size fit all approach. And I think that you know, like you mentioned getting more aware of menopause, but I think it's also getting more in touch with yourself and your body, because your symptoms, your body, how you can smooth yourself will be different from your friend, and that's why it's good to share, because then you share things of, oh, I haven't thought about that, maybe I should try this, or maybe I should try that. And I think for women, especially, like for my personal journey, I think that connecting to my body, connecting to my periods was very transformative for me in knowing more about my body, wanting to, you know, I'm kind of a bit of a like data geek, so I started to research more, to get to know more things, like how my cycle works, how cycles in general work and affect the human bodies. And once you have this knowledge, and then you are able to share it with other people, then you have invaluable tools to help you get healthier, help your friends, your family, your daughters, your son, everybody healthier as well. And also less ashamed, because sometimes you know, like having your period for a woman is something that's, you know, like, oh, you've got your period, like go away from us. Like it's used to be seen as something a little bit even disgusting, or we don't want to say the word, you know, like in Harry Potter, the one, like, I don't remember, the one you never name or something like that, you know, like that kind of vibe.
Voldemort.
Voldemort, exactly. And now it's more something like, yeah, we talk about it. We talk about menopause. We talk about all these things. And having this open conversation, I think is really helping a lot of people understand what they're going through and how they can, because we all have the tools in ourselves to, you know, like know, like, oh, like this is different than yesterday. Like what's up with me? Like, why am I having this mood? Oh, okay, yeah, I'm at this time, or this is what is affecting me. And then from there you do your own data collection, and then you can know what affects you, how you can also like deal with that.
Love it. Let's jump in real quick, Michelle, and then I'm going to pull up a couple of you who have your hands raised.
Sure, thank you. And so it's not always about, like, the bio trackers can be great. However, I think that we need to use our good old fashioned journals as well, and just investigate what works best for us. Like, it's great that we have guidelines and we have the research, but what works best for us? Can we incorporate variety? Can we experiment on ourselves? If I tweak this, how does this make me feel? Also, we need more literature on women and research on women beyond menopause. There's not a lot of research on menopausal women, and especially when we get to that post-menopause, ageism and sexism happens in research too. So really investigating what works best for us and being mindful of that and individualizing guidelines to ourselves, I think is really important. Also, I think that when we talk about bio trackers and physical health, we need to make sure we're incorporating emotional health and well-being too. I know when I finished chemotherapy, I was like, okay, I got breast cancer and I got that even though I was eating healthy and exercising. So now I'm going to eat even healthier and I'm going to exercise even more. And I'm going to follow the sleep guidelines. And then I quickly realized like, no, that is not how I want to live the rest of my life. I want to live a joy-filled life. And so kind of doing that mindset change of how can my attitude support nourishing foods, right? Like there's no good or bad food, but how can I support, eating nourishing foods and enjoying those with others, and the joy of movement, not pushing myself to do one more rep or something like that, but really trying to embrace movement. So I like the bio trackers, but I think that sometimes they can lead us a little bit too much down the data pathway, and we need to come back to the whole heart and the holistic.
Yes, the whole balance. I'm going to just mix it up, guys. So don't worry, I will get to all of you, but I just want to bring up a guy first and foremost, and you're going to have to help me. Chike, how do I say your amazing name, and welcome?
Yeah, that's Sheikh. Sorry, let me just move on a room because where I was a bit noisy. Yeah, my name is Sheikh. I'm calling from West Africa, Senegal, and I haven't get the chance to jump in and share my point of view and all that stuff. But I really enjoy the conversation and whatever, I mean, all that being said. And I'm gonna just kind of like make a little bit of I'm not gonna say summary, but I can tap on what Celine was saying, what Suzanne, Michelle, and Christine, because I kind of feel like there's a disconnection. There's a disconnection of ourselves. We disconnected with ourselves. We disconnected with everything that is around us, our environment, our relationship, and we're trying to use some of these tools that we call social media and all that things that are kind of antisocial. And I think like that disconnection with ourselves, even when you come to our food, we tend to eat just to please our tongue. And then, as somebody says, eat your food should be your medicine, which means like having that connection, knowing that that's what you have to do, but not that's what you want to do. Ultimately, you're gonna take you to different ways according to the choices you make. When it comes also how we relate with what some people call elderly, we call them elder because even the words kind of like make people into identity.
Oh no, we lost him. All right, well, let's comment on that about the awareness, some of these quick pieces, and then we'll pull up another question. Anybody? Suzanne, I saw your finger. Did you want to jump on that? Yeah.
Well, yeah, I mean, one of the reasons that I got interested in Ayurveda, and there were a lot of reasons I got interested in Ayurveda, I came through kind of yoga and meditation to understand that they are branches of Ayurveda. So for those who don't know, Ayurveda is the ancient indigenous medical system of India, similar in many ways to Chinese medicine, grew up around the same time, 5,000 to 8,000 years ago, depending on who's counting. And actually, the principle of all of many indigenous medicines is that disease starts as a disconnection from our true natures, which are a part of nature. So the understanding that we are not apart from nature, it is all one universe, and that humans are a part of the natural world. And when we misunderstand that essential nature of our own, that is where disease starts. I mean, it's a lot more complicated than that, but that really resonated with me. And I do think it's funny. I want to jump in, and I don't want to jump on the wearables. I think wearables are so interesting. Again, I am a physician. I am super weirdly interested in craziness that I want to prove it, right? But on the other side, I also practice, I practice meditation, yoga, and have a very deep spiritual understanding of my experience on the planet. The thing with the wearables, let's not make that a religion either. Talk about lack of data. There's not a lot of data. There's no data pretty much in women. So just be aware that when you're tracking this and that, and it's doing this and that, and it's like, but was that based on the experience of a 165-pound male? Because that's the standard. We're not the standard. So that's number one, be aware of what you're doing with that data. Does that data even apply to you? And then I also agree with what Michelle said. I think in a world, especially where women, and especially where the aging female bodied experience is really discredited and discarded, it can be very triggering for people around their own mental health, eating disorder, disordered eating, mood problems, which all tend to, by the way, crop up and reemerge. There's a lot of data on this in perimenopause midlife for a number of reasons. So I just feel like it's important to name that. Not saying don't you use your wearable, just like anything, it's a tool. Be careful. Don't let the tool use you. You use the tool.
I'm mixing everything up. Kendall, you are up, my friend. Except you're on that darn mute button. There we go.
Okay. Hi there. So, thank you. This is really exciting to be able to once again show up and be here. And I had a question about alternative modalities, which we've started to touch on, like Ayurveda, meditation. Last year, a year and a half ago, I brought a red light therapy panel into my home, and then I discovered IV drips, and specifically NAD+, glutathione. I just didn't feel that I was getting enough nutrients out of my food. I have a good diet, lots of exercise, and I just wanted to ask what your thoughts were on the alternative modalities, such as those.
Who wants to jump in? Michelle, Suzanne, we've got 2 docs in the house. Any thoughts there?
I mean, I'm just be careful. I'm not practicing medicine here. We don't have a doctor-patient relationship. So let me just start with that. And anybody who's going on the week, which is going to be amazing. So please, if you are into this, please join us. Christina and I, it's going to be so great. Okay. But I'm not practicing medicine in this environment. So I'm not going to comment specifically on those things. I don't love the word alternative because it makes it, do you hear the pejorative in there a little bit? I think I'm really interested in integrating cutting edge, conventional, tried and true, and indigenous medicine. That's the way I look at it. Again, I'm data driven. So even in the when I integrate, let's say, herbal medicine, which I do, or lifestyle medicine, I like to see that there's data on it. So I just be very, very careful in that. If these are things that you are doing in consultation with trusted providers and they're working for you, fantastic.
That's the problem.
All about it.
That's the problem. The trusted providers. I mean, I go to Cedars-Sinai and they're like, here's a drug for, higher blood pressure. And I don't want a drug. So I, continue to go through my, what I call alternative medicine, going to acupuncture, finding those. But I find that, like what you just said is if you don't have the data. So I'm the guinea pig in my own world and I'm on my own data tracker and I'm doing my own thing. And I'm like, I feel really good. And that's what's important. So I'm testing it. And I just was curious, if there was more information that MEA is, because it seems like when we're talking about blue zones, there's a lot of keywords here to be able to go back and research. And so, I'm curious. I guess that's where this is starting is like, oh, you know what? I remember hearing about that. Let me go back and check that out. And anyway, all of this stuff that we're doing, we're loving in our home. It's working. So,
love it. Thank you for bringing those up. I mean, the things people are hearing about and they're thinking about. And I think, Christine, what I love is that we're trying to make it simple. We're trying to just go back to the basics, which is so much fun about blue zones, eating your meals with people and naturally moving and finding the things that get you out of bed in the morning. We can all do well with those basics. I'm going to whip through a few folks. Nancy, super quick, come on up. I want to try to get to everybody who's got their hands up. Hi, Nancy.
Me, Nancy, eh?
Yes, you, Nancy.
Okay, yay. This has been my burning question for years. Supplements. So I'm well on the other side of, I'm actually 20 years since the kitchen closed, which I can't believe. I menopaused early, 44. And I kind of was on calcium and magnesium. I don't know. Now I'm taking nothing. I feel like I have a big, I don't know what to do about supplements. Hey,
all right, there we go. Supplements, go. What do you guys want to say about that? Go, Michelle.
I'm happy to jump in there. And I agree with what Suzanne said earlier, too, about the other therapies. So I think that for most people, once again, these are just kind of blanket general. I think that ideally, if we can get our nutrients through food for most of the time, that's best. There are certain situations where you have a certain, if there's some deficiency or something you're specifically targeting, that's another story. But in general, the phytonutrients, the plant nutrients that we have in food is really powerful. We don't even fully understand all the synergies that go on when we we eat. Also, the lack of regulation in the United States makes supplements tricky. I mean, there's some like vitamin D, where we have a lot of research out there showing that supplementation can be really beneficial because so many women have low levels. But with supplements, I always just do the like kind of, do everything with some caution, and know that you're kind of in a space where there's not as much regulation. Make sure that you're connected with practitioners who have expertise in that area and who can help guide you. Yeah.
Well, like, what do you guys take, if anything?
Well, Nancy, I gotta keep going. So we're gonna keep moving.
Okay, all right.
Jim, come on up, my friend.
I just want to add something, sorry, on what Michelle was saying is, yeah, like from the Blue Zones principle, like people in the Blue Zones get their nutrients from food. But one thing that makes the difference is the quality of the food that you're eating. And like I've seen some research about tomatoes, and like tomatoes now and tomatoes like 10 years ago or 20 years ago are more like nutrient poor. So, because the soil is not as rich. And then, like the fruit and vegetables that doesn't get as much nutrients. They are growing up inside and not outside, not getting the sunlight, etc., etc. So I think like checking, like before going to finding other things to add, maybe like checking what is the quality of the food that you're eating and the ingredients that you're eating.
Love it. Perfect. Okay, Jim, quick. How are you? You're on mute, my friend.
Hello, Jim.
Sorry. I wanted to all dwell on male menopause because it's certainly not as disastrous medically or emotionally as what our ladies go through, but it does exist. But what I do talk about all the time, because I talk about aging cheerfully and productively, is that you are as old as you think. And if you think old, you will get old. And I tell audiences, right this very minute, you are the oldest you've ever been, right this very minute. And you're the youngest you'll ever be. So what are you going to do the rest of the afternoon and for the next 10 years? But mainly I want you to get off your duff and to do something. I have friends saying to me, you're out of your mind, Flaherty. You're planning things that are 5 years out and 10 years out, and I'll be 89 in September. But I said, it doesn't matter. I've got plans. I have a purpose. Everybody needs a purpose. That's it. Come on.
Jim, man, our MEA ambassador all the way. Thank you. That was awesome. I'm going to bring up Judith, and then Christine, I just have to have you open up your camera to join me. Okay, so I'll grab you next, Christine. Hey, Judith.
Hi, I'll try to be real quick. I love what everyone's saying, about getting the quality foods and herbs and all of that. There's some things that we can't get once we go through menopause, which is the hormones back. So I guess, and without, asking you a question where you're practicing medicine, if you can talk generally in the early 2000s, there was a report that actually, people really relied on where, I'm in my late 60s now. I relied on the data and didn't do any kind of hormone therapy. Now I'm in my late 60s and I'm like, is it too late kind of thing? So really two-part question, if you can just address generally what your thoughts are about hormone therapy. And then if you feel comfortable talking about what that means to those of us who have already gone through menopause.
Yeah, I
Great.
really want
Thank you, Judith. And now we only have like 2 minutes for that one. So go for it, Suzanne.
I feel very passionate about that. I'm going to encapsulate it this way. Almost as soon as that study came out, the Women's Health Initiative, they were walking it back. We have spent 22 years in medicine trying to debunk every single aspect of it. And I'm going to be honest with you, the boomers got screwed. You guys got screwed because without going into all the deep weeds, I think this is the way I look at healthcare in general. We've got a toolkit. I told you guys I have a deeper and a wider toolkit. A saw or a hammer or a nail gun are not inherently good or bad. They are tools. They are for specific jobs. Hormone therapy, what we now call menopausal hormone therapy, is a tool. It's a powerful tool. It's far more effective and way more safe than most people understand because of the Women's Health Initiative. And I'm happy to see those of you who are in Los Angeles. It will take a long time to get to see me, but I'm around. I think you should be finding doctors who will have a conversation with you. It's complicated and it's not, but I'll tell you what the bottom line is here. People, were doing the best they could. and also misogyny plus ageism. So we are trying to fix that. I'm not saying hormone therapy is for everybody. I'm not saying hormone therapy isn't for anybody. I'm saying it's a thing and we should do better when we discuss it.
Prescribe to those in their late 60s?
I need a lot more information. I will tell you that the data available to us at this point indicates that if you initiate hormone therapy in the right person within 5 to 10 years of their last menstrual period before the age of 60, it is very effective for long-term health benefits and for symptom management. So after the age of 60 or after 5 to 10 years of menopause, there is no evidence to support using it for extension of health span. Okay, none. Now, if you come to me at 67, you have no reason why you can't be on hormones, you're highly symptomatic, I would give it to you. That's my personal practice. I don't want to, again, there's a lot of other things to talk about. This is medicine, but I do think these are important points. And I think most of your doctors don't understand this very well. I'm in LA and I'm going to tell you all day, every day, you guys, I hear crazy shit. I can't believe my colleagues are saying it. I cannot believe it all day, every day. Today, I had telemed this morning, more stories, mind blowing.
Great.
So
Christine,
it's not you, it's them.
Christine Meyer, take us home. We have 1 minute left. So it's like 30-second question.
So my question was similar to the one that was just asked, but another one to add on to that. How important is it for us to get our hormone levels tested so that we kind of know where we're at?
Don't.
There's a lot of confusing.
Don't.
Why?
Because it's not going to, menopause is not a disease, and are not looking for a therapeutic range. It's academically interesting. I'm talking about generically speaking. Menopause is defined as 12 consecutive months without a menstrual bleed between the ages of 45 and 55 for no other medical reason. You don't test your kids' hormones in puberty. You don't need to test your hormones around perimenopause or menopause. It's not really very informational in general. So don't waste your money on people who are trying to steal your money. Don't let them do it.
Wow, Christine, whoa, guys. What an amazing hour. Thank you so much, Céline, Michelle, Suzanne, for being here today. Christine, take us home, hon. Last final words.
I can't believe, Carrie, that you and I get to sit in a place where we get to convene these conversations. I am so grateful to all three of you for joining us, for everyone who signed on. Spread the word. Awareness makes deep change. It really does.